by line item, break it down. You want to show a mortgage specifically. You want to show what the cost of care would look like. You want to show someone's utility bills. Whatever it is, you can go line by line. And I do have advisors that I work with literally that will put 20 to 30 line items in here from a budgeting standpoint. But we also, as I mentioned before, kind of being this tool where you can get very deep or stay very, very, very high level, you don't have to do that to just be able to create a plan quickly based on a targeted number. So in this case, we're just going to use that $80,000 a year number for expense purposes. Now, as I continue through, this is really where the first sales story starts to happen. And I'm going to kind of position this as I did as an advisor to kind of make the context hopefully seem clear. In this case, I want to do a little bit of navigation on this page. If anyone else has used any other portfolio analysis tools or risk tools, some of this may look familiar. But basically what we've done is we've taken a look at an aggregate right now of all the assets we keyed in, so $1.45 million. Over the last 20 years, that $1.45 million has averaged 4.6% per year in its current holdings. Now, I know that 10 years ago you may have had different mutual funds or different stocks, but we're just saying backcasted over the last 20 years, these three accounts in the current investments, which I kind of showed in the sources page, have averaged 4.6% for that total amount. Now, it's pretty unique. We have 4 different historical periods you can use. So you can actually toggle between, well, what did it do in the 15-year? Was it a little bit better? What did it do the last 10? Well, the market's been doing well, so that makes sense that it's higher. But, you can look at it in any environment and also in a rising interest rate period. You can also toggle on and off assets to look at things more granular. Maybe you just wanted to focus on, maybe they're like, look, don't worry about my savings and bond account. Let's just talk IRA money. Well, that million, a little bit more risk. It changes the dynamic. But you can look at things, again, on an aggregate or an individual basis. In this case, we're going to be looking at everything as an aggregate over the last 20 years. We also apply a risk value. So, from 1 to 100, 1 being ultra-conservative like cash that can't lose, and 100 being aggressive like a high-growth stock with a lot of volatility, what's that number look like across all the positions? And in this case, it came back at a 59. So this portfolio from 1 to 100 came with a risk value of 59. That number doesn't necessarily have to mean anything. Just kind of think about where that sits between 1 and 100, a little bit past halfway, maybe moderately aggressive. And the idea is that this is the way that you kind of position that to the client, is you want to find out their risk tolerance. And what we've done to do that is created a conversation around willingness to lose. And I think one of the things we've done over time is understand that having a conversation like, what's your risk tolerance? Oh, it's moderate. Well, moderate to this person might be completely different than moderate to that person. We wanted to kind of quantify this in a dollar amount. So to do that, we've put in a 95% confidence interval over a 12-month period, which is what you're seeing on the screen with its potential gain and potential loss numbers. What that story is, if you're familiar, the standard deviation conversation, that bell curve, 2 standard deviations either way from the mean, is a statistically normal market on a bull or bear side. So the way that we've approached this with the 95% confidence interval is said, look, in the next 12 months, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you can make upwards of $340,000 over that year period, in a bull market. But you have just as much likelihood statistically to lose $209,000 in that same year. Are you comfortable losing $209,000 in the next 12 months? And we found that if you can quantify someone's willingness to lose, you get a much more actual understanding of their appetite for risk, and then we can build a more efficient portfolio from there. So as an example, if I approach this to the client and they said, no, absolutely not, I didn't know I was taking on that much risk, or I'm not willing to lose that much, well, obviously you want some upside. What are you willing to lose? And maybe they tell you it's, I don't know, 125, 150,000. Well, as I drag this down, you'll see that this basically will set a new parameter for me, whether it's up or down, right? So in this case, maybe they say they're only willing to lose about 125,000. Well, in this case, if I set my acceptable loss number close to 125, you'll see a few things that have happened. I might give up a little bit of upside to get there. My downside's been reduced to a $125,000 loss, and I have a new risk target. We were at a 59, and my new risk target's a 37. So basically, again, the number doesn't have to mean a lot, but the idea is we're reducing it, right? They basically have told you that they want to take on less risk. They're more comfortable with a lower loss potential, so we're going to show them that. Now, what's unique is for every risk target in our software from 1 to 100, we also calculate what you should be able to make over that same historical period. So that you should be able to make about 5.9%, but you only made 4.6. So right off the bat, when I saw this as an advisor, it was kind of an exciting moment because I knew I had a sales opportunity. Your portfolio is very inefficient. So the question I would pose to you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, is, based on what you just told me of wanting to have a lower loss potential number of 125,000, that gives us a new risk target to hit of 37. So we need to narrow the parameters on your risk zone. If I can achieve that by building you a more efficient portfolio with less risk, but all the while I can actually make you more money or have a higher average than you had before, isn't that something you'd be interested in? What would be your objection to working with me? So that's the way I kind of tee up the sales conversation to go to the next screen. So I'm going to hit proceed to detailed view and show you how that looks. In our detailed view of risk, what you'll see are a couple new components. First, you've got the portfolio efficiency graph. How much risk are you taking for the reward you're receiving? Again, we want to be somewhere up here when it comes to portfolio efficiency. We don't want to be down in this lower right quadrant. That's a lot of risk, not a lot of return. We want to drive the conversation left and upward. And also, you're reminded that you've got a risk target of 37 based on a current value of 59. We also have the risk zone that's brought over. You'll see that little warning message, exceeding tolerance. You're taking on more risk than you'd like to based on what you just told me. So we have a job to do. We need to get this risk zone inside the tolerance you've asked for. We hopefully can increase some returns by building a more efficient portfolio, and let's drive this dot up into the left on the portfolio efficiency graph. So one of the things that's unique about our platform, we're the only software that I've seen in the space that can do this. We can model these annuities that Grant alluded to at an actuarial level from the carrier in coordination with various investment models or third-party tactical portfolios that are out in the field. So as I mentioned before, in my practice, I was 60-40, maybe close to 50-50 on the AUM side. Anyone can use our software, right? So it doesn't have to, you can be insurance only, you can be registered rep. But if you are having the discussion of, let's invest some dollars and then maybe peel some out into this bucket for less risk, this is one of the ways you can do it. You can show the parent on our software of that investment vehicle with the annuity product. So as an example, I'm going to go into, I have a number of portfolios that I've loaded in here, and all of these you'll see actually have risk values and an estimated annual return over that same period associated with them. So you'll notice, some of these are just various tickers that we've loaded in. Some of these are actually third-party managers' accounts that we've also worked with. And you'll see as I plot them, they show on the screen their opportunity for return and also if they're in or outside of the risk zone. So some of these you'll notice we have a desired target of 37. I could go down here and I've got one that's well inside of the risk zone with a pretty high return. Well, the idea is that we've studied this for a while and we've found that one of the most efficient ways to build portfolios is to actually leverage higher risk or more aggressive investment accounts and then peeling dollars out into something like an FIA, in this case with F&G, to show that combination to really maximize efficiency. So I'm actually going to go to a portfolio that I have that's a little bit more aggressive. It's a tactical aggressive model that is taking on more risk than we want to, but has significant upside. You'll see that if I apply this, and I'm going to add this to a proposal so I can compare the outcomes, you'll see that this investment portfolio I'm using has a 14.8% return. So over that same 20-year period this portfolio averaged 4.6, this one averaged 14.8. Now I know that the risk value is too high. It's outside the zone, we're up here, but the whole idea is we want to be somewhere over here at some point, and by leveraging something with more return, peeling some out for, in this case, to use an FIA is really a strong way to go. So I tee this up to the client of, our job's not done. Now we need to talk about peeling some money out of this new investment bucket, putting it in a safe bucket for accumulation, and I want to show the impact on the screen. So in this case, I'm going to go to diversify. I'm going to peel some money out of this IRA, and you'll notice that in this case, I'm going to use the F&G accumulator plus 10. I'm going to move it to the Trailblazer allocation for accumulation, and I'm going to add it to the plan. Anytime you add an annuity from a modal in our system, Grant alluded to it, it is the product in real time at an actuarial level with that carrier. So you've got some resources here on the right side of the screen you can also view pertaining to the product, but you're adding the current product in its real state. So as I hit continue, the whole idea is watch on the screen as I add dollars from the investment account into the F&G product, my risk value is going to go down, my return is going to probably decrease a little bit. I've got to give up some upside, but I'm going to hit this risk zone and move this conversation down to the left. So as I drag money in, you'll see that green dot move. Now in this case, to hit that right about there, right? So you see where I stopped that at $720,000 I just put in? Current risk value was 68. My target was a 37. I just hit 37. You'll see my risk zone down here. I'm within tolerance. You know, 30,000 less, I'm not there. As I move that to a $720,000 premium, my risk zone's hit, my risk value is hit. Where would you rather be, right here or right here? Oh, and by the way, we went from a 4.6% return on an average over 20 years to 10.87. So this is a conversation where when you're all said and done here with the client on the accumulation side, we went from having a portfolio that was massively inefficient. Oh, sorry, I just X'd out. Pop back in here. We went to a portfolio that was massively inefficient, right, from a place that had not a lot of upside, unfortunately, to an environment where now we have a lot less risk and much more upside, right? And the whole idea was that was done in this case by putting in $720,000 into the plan. Now, one of the things that's unique about this is I can continue this conversation into an income conversation, right? So I'm actually going to apply this right now, and I'm going to put this into the plan. Now, as I move the conversation forward, I want to take a quick second almost as a break because I think it's important to remember this. These conversations that we're having, I have advisors that just have income conversations. I have ones that just focus on accumulation and risk portfolio management like we just showed. You can have them in tandem or you can have them very separate. So in this case, I'm going to go forward to our planning section, which is our income plan page, but I'm going to go back to the original draft because I want to kind of highlight how we can analyze the original holdings in an income conversation. So that last page, again, portfolio efficiency, talking about how we can increase upside, reduce risk, maximize efficiency, and we use the Accumulator Plus there as an accumulation play, no rider, no fee, as a risk-free bucket, and we maximize a lot of potential for that client. And again, you know, one of the things that I just would like to mention again, you'll see here, the increase in premium. In that case, I had to drag that slider to $720,000 to get them in the risk zone they wanted. That's the justification on why I put that much premium in there. Before in my practice, before I used RetireUp Pro, I would get pushback. Well, why are you recommending that much in an annuity? What's the reasoning? And of course, I had logic, but it was never really that sound in comparison to this. I never got pushback when I showed that screen and they saw the, oh, it's an aha moment. I get it. I told you I only wanted to lose $125,000 potentially in a year, and you needed that much in the annuity to get me there. So it just provides a lot more justification. While we're on this page in the plan, again, I'm back in our original draft, so this is without the F&G product, just the original holdings. We've brought over the holdings average into this screen. So we actually take all the positions that you have, we've taken the average and standard deviation and recreated a market cycle. In this case, it's an average sequence of returns to retire in. You're retiring here in about 6 years from now, taking $80,000 a year adjusted for inflation. And it's a pretty picture, right? It's starting with $1.45 million. We're applying a 20% tax rate, which can be changed in an inflation rate of 2.5. And the client takes income from age 62 all the way up to 90, and they pass away with about what they started with. So if we're looking at this for the client as a visual, in an average market sequence with their current holdings, it's pretty nice, right? They start with $1.45 million, they pass away with about the same amount, and it's a good story. Well, the issue becomes is what happens if it's not as pretty? What happens if the market is a problem? What happens if our sequence of returns is not as positive, right? So one of the things that I'd like to mention too is you can always go into more detailed views of these income years, where the money is coming from in various years across the top, what the growth looks like, what the withdrawal rate looks like, and you can do this in more spreadsheet type views at a cash flow and account balances level. So just know that there's a lot more detail here. I'm just saying high level visual from a sales standpoint. So in this case, the main story we want to talk about is this income stability ratio. Right now it's at 43%. What that means is 43% of the current cash flow in this plan is coming from known or guaranteed assets. Social Security, pension, income from an annuity from an income rider, right? But that means that 57% of this is left up to chance. So 57% of the income in this plan is being left up to the market. Well, as I mentioned, we've put the sequence of return setting to average. So we have found in our sequence of returns, we have a 100-year market cycle that we're using with the average and standard deviation of your portfolio. And in that 100-year sequence, we found the best, worst, and most normal or average time to retire. Well, the problem is if you told your client, well, look,